this video, I'm going to talk about the different sets of data that I track as I transcribe pieces. So, this first spreadsheet is called Classical Music Database, and this is where I keep track of which pieces I have transcribed, how much of that piece I have transcribed, and whether I've uploaded the piece or not, in the case of Mozart, as well as just some general info about the piece. So here you can see I have a number column. This is where the opus numbers, Kerschel numbers, BWV numbers, etc. go. And then I have a piece title column. And then I've got the sections column. This is where I put the movements, movement numbers if it's a multi-movement piece, the piece titles if it's a set of pieces, and then there's the instrumentation column. This is where I put in what the instrumentation of the piece is. And there's this "Have I transcribed it yet?" column, which keeps track of whether or not I've transcribed the piece and how far I am into transcribing the piece. As you can see, the cells in the instrumentation column and the "Have I transcribed it yet?" column that have text are colored. This is because I have conditional formatting rules in there. For the instrumentation column, it is a lot of conditional formatting rules. It basically, like, these variations of red are for strings. The variations of purple are for voices plus other instruments. The very light purples are for voices, chorus plus other instrument. These pinks here, these magentas, are for voices alone. These bright blues are for male chorus plus other instrument. These oranges here are for keyboard and orchestra. These teals here are for instrumentations with organ in there. These blues are for woodwind ensemble. And these oranges are for strings and orchestra. You got bassoon plus other instrument here. These greens are for woodwind plus orchestra. And this kind of golden color is for horn and orchestra. And these other yellows and oranges for horns in the ensemble. And these bright purples for clarinet, strings. This gray here means unspecified. These blacks are for piano as the only instrument, whether that's piano 4 hands, 2 pianos 8 hands, piano. This bright teal is for organ solo. More strings. Like, a lot of these, like, transfer over from one composer to another. So, like, I made most of these instrumentations for Mozart, but I ended up needing some others for Haydn, some others for Beethoven. But, and, like, I found that other composers have instrumentations that are inside the Beethoven sheet and not the Mozart sheet, so copy from the Beethoven sheet if another composer uses that instrumentation. And then, in this folder, in this column, I don't know why the roles are doubled up here, but they are. Just ignore that. But green here means that I've finished that section or that piece. Yellow means I'm part of the way through the section or the piece. And then red means I haven't started on it. And you can see these nested if statements. This is how I get the top cell here of the piece to change in accordance to the movement cells. And I'll demonstrate here. If I put in partly here for the first movement, you can see that that top cell changes to partly. And it stays like that until all the movement cells are yes, and then the top cell changes to yes. So that's how that thing works. Now with Mozart, things get a bit more complicated with the nested ifs because operas. So in an opera, I have multiple levels of these nested ifs. So like, the top level of the nested if is the different parts of the opera, the different major parts of the opera. So here, it's Overture, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, Appendix. And then, within the act, there's another level of these nested ifs. This is the scene level. Scene 1, Scene 2, Scene 3, and so on. And then, for each scene, there's yet another level of nested ifs. This is for the individual parts within the scene, the arias, the recitatives, and so forth. And then there's just the yes, no, partly cells for the individual sections. And you can see that some of these Mozart pieces have yes marked in both columns. That's because I have both transcribed the piece and uploaded it to MuseScore.com. The next set of data that I track is the time signature distribution. And here you can see it's a little bit different. Instead of being each composer getting its own sheet within the spreadsheet, instead of that, there's just one sheet, and it's divided into 3 eras, each with a different color, and then there's another sheet for the charts. And this is where I track how many times the composer uses a certain time signature. Every time that I see another time signature in the piece, I add it to this data set. And I started off with 10 common time signatures that I figured I would come across in all 3 eras. Those being 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, 2/2, 6/8, 3/8, 9/8, 12/8, 3/2, and 6/4. I figured I would come across those 10 time signatures in all the eras, hence me starting with those 10. And then, as I come across other time signatures, I added them in to the data for that era. So I added in 4/2 here because I came across it in a canon by Mozart. And I added 2/8 here because I came across it in a prelude by Chopin. And here you can see the charts, and I have a lot more data right now for the classical era than I do for the other eras, mainly because of Mozart, but also in large part because of Beethoven. And you can see that for all the composers of the classical era so far, 3/4 has been the most common time signature, and I'm not at all surprised by that, because a lot of minuets in that era, and a lot of those minuets have a trio that also has 3/4 marked. So I'm counting 3/4 twice because I see it twice, and so I end up with a lot of 3/4. But you can also see that 2/4 and 4/4 are very common as well. And then 2/2, 6/8, and 3/8 are not as common, but they're not that rare. And then 9/8, 3/2, and 4/2. For these, I have just one piece each by Mozart and nothing else. But that will change. I know that will change. And I don't have anything for 12/8 or 6/4 yet either, but I know that's gonna change as well. Now for the Baroque era, you can see I have some handle data here, but it's not much. That handle data is from his water music suites. I started transcribing those more for analysis purposes at first, but I've got a bit of a head start on Handel. And then here you can see the Romantic era, and you can see I have a lot more from Schubert than from Chopin. Again, a lot of that has to do with the minuets. Like, I fully transcribed a set of 20 minuets by Schubert, and a lot of this 3/4 bar for Schubert comes from those minuets. And so, yeah, I know that these time signature distributions are going to change, and I'm probably gonna end up adding more composers to both the classical and Baroque era ones, and I know I'm gonna add more composers to the Romantic era one. Which means I'm gonna have to change the set of data, or the data ranges for these, and I will do that. I do that every time I add a new time signature, every time I add a new composer. I will change the data ranges in these charts to reflect that. And then here we got the score size data spreadsheet. This is where I keep track of different measures of score size. First of which is the number of measures, and then there's the number of staves, and then there's the duration. And I have this for full piece, individual movement, And in the case of Mozart, I also have a separate one for operas and masses and oratorios. And then the last set of data that I track is the key distribution by composer, and here I have to set a few more criteria as to what counts as a data point for the key distribution. The first one is individual pieces, either isolated, as in it's just that piece, or as part of a set, like, say, a set of 6 minuets. Movements of multi-movement works. For something like a piano sonata, I would be counting the key of the full sonata as well as the key of each of the movements of the sonata. Parts of masses, oratorios, cantatas, and operas. And I mean, this kind of goes back to the movements of multi-movement works thing. For a minuet, that's in minuet and trio form, I count both the full minuet as well as the A section by itself, and the B section, the trio, by itself. So 3 data points, 1 for the full minuet, and 2 for the different sections in the minuet. Entire piece. Now this one applies to most pieces, but it does not apply to operas and oratorios because it doesn't make sense. You wouldn't say that an opera is in D major simply because its opening overture and its ending chorus or whatever are both in D major. That doesn't mean that you'd say that the opera is in D major, so like, it doesn't make sense for me to put the opera in entire piece, because you don't really apply a key to an opera. But for Mass, yes, you'd say Mass in C minor. For cantata, it really depends on the composer. For a Bach cantata, yes, you'd say the cantata is in G minor or whatever. And then, wherever a key signature change occurs, now, with that, basically, I mean, mid-piece key signature change, mid-movement key signature change. So, like, if you have a C minor piece that then has a change to naturals, C major, that's where that criteria would come in. And you can see here what the key distribution looks like for the composer. And here, with the key distribution, I decided to only go with the systematic order. In other words, in the case of Beethoven here, that would mean there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8 pieces here because I've finished 7 and I'm in the process of transcribing an 8th. So I only have 8 full piece data points here for Beethoven. You can see I have a lot more section data points. This is because of the movements and the minuet and trio thing. And in some cases, mid-movement key signature changes. Though I haven't come across it that much in Beethoven yet. I have come across that quite a bit in Chopin, though. And a bit in Mozart, especially a bit in Mozart, a bit in Haydn, a bit in Beethoven. I don't really encounter that in Bach. I've encountered that quite a bit in Schubert, though, and Chopin. Mid-piece key signature change. Mid-movement key signature change. And you can see I have the major keys in their own set of columns and the minor keys in their own set of columns. Major key, number of pieces in that key, number of sections, so movements, key signature changes, etc. in that key, and then total number of data points in that key. And I had the same go for the minor keys. And here you can see I have C major, C sharp / D flat major, D major, E flat major, E major, F sharp / G flat major, G major, A flat major, A major, B flat major, and B major. And I had the same here, except they're all minor. And the letters are all lowercase. That's how I'm designating minor here in the spreadsheet. And, once I encounter, like, these enharmonic keys here, like, I'll separate them out for the composer to, say, C sharp major and D flat major, having their own separate row once I encounter them, until I either find that, hey, this composer used both C sharp and D flat, like Bach, or, oh, and I haven't seen C sharp, I'm gonna delete the C sharp. But, of course, I'll only really know that once I'm at the very last piece of the composer. So that's all the data that I track. The general info / transcription progress, time signature distribution, score size, and key distribution. That's the data that I track. for each of the composers. In the next video, I'll be going over the schedule determining factors and also why I have to use sample averages for schedule determination. So stay tuned for that.